Good morning, everybody. At the outset, I must thank Dr. Sarit Kumar for inviting me and then persisting with the invitation that I have no alternative but to come and speak here. I agreed to his request, and all these days I have been very worried what will happen to me and how will I expose myself in front of such luminaries and such intellectuals. I'm used to speaking to students, but speaking to the vice chancellors, and that also of the stature that we have here, and speaking in the presence of Professor Thimeya is too much of a challenge. So I seek your forgiveness in case you find my thoughts and my talk very preliminary. But what I have attempted is, instead of presenting a structured, a well-prepared talk, I thought I'll share with you some random thoughts. Now, while this topic had been fixed, augmenting resources for research and development, very, very timely topic, I thought, what should I really be sharing? And given the introduction that you have just heard, my own experience of education in the country, which I have had luckily in various convent schools, and then my final years in central school, which is a CBSE, then in universities in India, and then 3 different universities, Harvard, Stanford, and University of New South Wales, Sydney, abroad, amongst the best universities in the world. I thought I'll share some thoughts, share my concerns, and then at the concluding part, I will share some suggestions, and if that is, and I'll be open to questions. So that is how my presentation is going to work through. I was already working at the Reserve Bank of India when I went to do my postdoctorate studies at Harvard. And you know, Harvard for an economist is a mecca. Mecca because Harvard doesn't sit alone in its own self. Harvard Business School, Kennedy School of Government, MIT, and Boston University, they provide the synergy. If you go for studies at Harvard, you are permitted to go and attend classes at MIT, at Boston University, at Harvard Business School, at the Kennedy School. No questions are asked. You can participate in seminars, in conferences, even take classes, and you get credit for it. To me, that was the best experience I had, because no university can claim to have all the knowledge. MIT and Harvard, between them they have so many Nobel laureates, and Kennedy School had the practical knowledge, some ministers working there as professors, Hoffman Ricardo, for example. For some reason, I wanted to move to Stanford, and I was lucky to go to Stanford. And Stanford University gave me a very different feeling. Stanford's interaction with Silicon Valley was so high that Stanford made me understand what a university is for, how it serves the society, and how the society supports the university. It was a very different experience. Incidentally, in Harvard, as it was set up, basically, one of the founding factors was they wanted to train their clergy. And that is how Harvard Divinity School became very prominent. At both these universities, and these are not very old universities, hardly a history of about 400 years, I was constantly reminded of my university back home, Nalanda University. Nalanda University is so unique, and the word Da that comes behind Nalanda is for the word Dan, giving, charity. Nalanda used to work not on fees, but on support by the dynasty then, as well as charity. I was also reminded of Takshila, which was far away from where Nalanda was, and Takshila had its own unique history. Who funded Takshila? And what were the number of students doing there? More than 10,000. Looking back again in life, I used to wonder which university trained people who wrote Ramayana. Which university trained people who wrote Mahabharata? And which university led the researchers to come out with Ayurvedic stream of medicine? I have always wondered and asked questions to my professional friends, where did this all come from? These days we have universities, we have Department of Literature, many languages, but why have we not produced a Ramayana or a Mahabharata? We have Harvard Medical College, we have All India Institute of Medical Sciences here. How come Ayurveda goes unchallenged and comes out supreme whenever other medical sciences fail? In similar light, I have been wondering when probably the first time the wheel was discovered. Who funded the discovery of the wheel? That's too long ago. And then the cart, the horse cart, the bullock cart and everything, and the whole vehicular traffic today works on the principle of wheel. We are trying magnetic fields, but still the wheel. How was steam engine invented? Random thoughts in modern times. I wonder, what is research and for whom to do research? All of us who have a PhD, and in this room that means everybody, have studied these papers of methodology of research, hypothetical testing of research, hypothesis formation, and we know what research is. It should be replicable. And for whom are we doing this research? Are we doing it for salaries, pensions, incentives, society? For whom? Now in Western countries, when it comes to research and research universities, universities of higher education, I'm taking these together for some time until I go later in my talk and start making a distinction. We all know these universities have survived, the major ones. I'm not talking of government universities, and I know there are many, like University of California, and they have various campuses. I had the privilege to teach at Los Angeles, University of UCLA. Most of the universities there, like Stanford, like Harvard, Princeton, survive on endowments and grants. At Princeton, I was talking to one of the members of their board, and he told me that the education in Princeton is so expensive that 50% of the students, higher education students, especially at the masters and at the PhD, all of them are doing it free. 50% of the students the university funds them from endowments. And their target is that by about 2025, they would like all their postgraduates fully funded by the endowments. Where are these endowments coming from? And then, basically, the endowments come from donations, charity, and most of it comes from their alums. The alumni are so strong there, they contribute back to the education system. They recognize the fact that if the country and the society has to move forward, the only way is support, encourage, and feed into the education system. Some of these universities, and I have experience of first hand at Harvard and Stanford, and Harvard Business School and Stanford Business School, where a good amount of research also takes place, they depend a lot on executive education. And that is where good amount of money is there. IIM Bangalore and other IIMs in India, not all of them, the important ones have learned that lesson and are following and pursuing exactly that system where they go and tap executive education because that is where resources are. And then they cross-subsidize the research. Universities like Oxford and Cambridge have also tapped the publication era. They go around, they have publishing houses, and they are very reputed publishing houses, and these are very, very large profitable centers. So these two universities have adopted another core, and that is the publishing house. At Stanford, I realized the interaction, and partly even at MIT, and you know the Bose speakers, the professor who really set up that Bose speakers company was a professor at Harvard. At Stanford and at MIT, at Stanford and MIT, the interrelationship between industry and academia is very, very solid. The academia is going out, doing research and projects which the industry requires. In my last stint while teaching at UCLA this April to June, I realized that on artificial intelligence, UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles, is working, interacting with the industry, and the resources that have been provided by the artificial intelligence industry to UCLA is so large that they're looking for promising students. So the executive education, the publishing house, and the alumni, as well as the interaction between industry and academia, is playing a very important role in higher education, research, and these universities. Something which probably some of you may know, and I'm going to draw upon this example in a few minutes, is the differential fee structure. When I was studying at Harvard, paying through my nose, or at Stanford, I came across students who are from America hardly paying any fees. Their fee is so small that an average American is able to afford it. But any foreigner coming on the brand name of the university has to pay a very large fees. So the differential fee structure that they have helped them finance the higher education and research. Even the selection criteria that they follow for international students and for students from their own country is different, so that the students who are from within their country are enriched by the presence of international students, and that enriches the society back home. Of course, we have on the other extreme, Germany, where education is almost free. With this little background of the global scenario, how they are funding their education, let me now look at what is happening in India. In India, it was expected that if we are able to contribute 6% of GDP into education for 25 years, we will be a knowledge-based economy and we will then be amongst the top universities in the world. As you know, even today, except one, we are not in the top 500. What happened? Did we ever pay 6% of GDP into education? No. Years passed by and we contributed sometimes 2%, sometimes 4% of GDP into education. And that proportion of money which was put into education has also varied, and even the definition of that money has also varied. What should be included, what should not be included. Apart from this, you know better than me, UGC and other institutions like CSSR and others have been playing a role in funding research. UGC's own budget, and we have the Joint Secretary here with us, I understand about 20% of their budget goes in funding research. There are now, especially now, private institutions which have entered into research, and one of them is a glaring example, the Observer Research Foundation, mainly financed by Reliance. They are doing good amount of research. And then there are individuals who have come together and are funding research. And the best example that we have is the Ananta Aspen Center, where individuals are contributing in terms of they have made a board of trustees, and then they are contributing towards research. At the corporate level, unfortunately, what is happening in the US is not happening in India. CSR, which should have played a prominent role in funding research and universities, is not really concentrating on this aspect. It's very interesting to know that 74% of the amount of CSR goes into Prime Minister's Relief Fund. That's the safest thing to do. And to me, probably that is not a sustainable thing to do. If you have to do sustainable social development, what better opportunity than to put money into education? But CSR is not getting into this. As I mentioned, internationally, publishing houses have done good amounts of service for higher research and these universities of international ranking. We in India have not, but probably could, explore journals, publishing houses. Journals also give good amount of financial support and encourage research. We could think in terms of publishing houses of our own universities. Executive education is still lacking within our university structure. IIMs are exploring that and actually exploiting that resource sufficiently. And if you look up the profit loss and balance sheet of IIMs, you will see executive education contributes a significant amount into funding of these elite institutions. I also think we need to tweak our courses. We have our students joining us, but in the mid-age group where earning is already taking place, capabilities are there, there is every reason and equal opportunity should be provided to people in that age group if they want to learn something about philosophy or psychology or society, or they want to explore something in the field of accounting or commerce. Executive education in our universities can serve as an excellent source of funding, but has not been explored at all. Now, I'm going to ask myself, I've struggled with this, ask a question which is very basic. What is the quality of education that we are providing in our society? Why people like Narayan Murthy have to say that our graduates are unemployable? And I'm not just depending on what Narayan Murthy has said. My own experience at Indian Institute of Management, when I used to go and select candidates for our MBA flagship courses, the 2 years diploma, two things came to my notice. First, students who are from IITs and a few good universities like Delhi University, JNU, make it through the CAT exam. And those are the students I interview. That means students from other universities do not even have the capability to crack the CAT exam. Not even the capability. And one or two that filtered through from other universities than IITs, BITS Pilani, and JNU and Delhi University, other than these, if students cracked through, you could literally see it in the interview that they will not be able to withstand the pressure of IIM. Even if he answered your questions, and moment you touched on issues that you test his strength and the pressure, if he can stand that pressure, the student would wilt away. If you asked questions about objectives in his life, his objective of life, they would be very mundane and there would be no fire in the belly of the student so that he could come and fight it out in the campus of IIM. What is the quality of education that we are providing? And when I say this, I'm looking at the complete spectrum of education, starting from school, undergraduates, postgraduates, PhD students, because I have had an interaction with students at every level. Let me give you a very simple illustration. At Stanford, as a postdoctorate, I was eligible to keep a research assistant who would be paid by the Stanford University, not me. And the research assistant that I was given to choose from were all in the final year undergraduate degree. My interaction with them, and please remember, I was doing my postdoctorate studies after working in the Reserve Bank for about 15 odd years. These Stanford undergraduates, final year students, were so sharp. I would tell them a job and it would be done. My expectations were from an Indian standard. They will give it to me in 24 hours or 48 hours, nothing doing. And for them, the day or night did not matter. You will be surprised. They were paid $12 per hour. And many times I had a feeling he has put about 20 hours of work in this, but he will not charge me for 20 hours. As it is, I was not paying. I had only to certify how many hours he has worked. He would say 10 hours or 11 hours. If I was in India, that undergraduate student, and I'm speaking out of my own experience, because even in the Reserve Bank, I had my own research officers and economic assistants working for me, and they also came from good universities. If I would expect 40 hours from them, Stanford, I was expecting at least 20 hours. These children will put up a bill of 10 hours to me. Such expert assistance that they would give me, flawless. And if I ask them about working on an Excel sheet, I'm sorry, I'm talking 30 years ago or 20 years ago, Excel sheet, they knew it. If I asked them to work on grandeur causality, it's a time series analysis, they knew it. What is the type of quality of education that we are giving to our students? And I'll come to it a little later. At IIM Bangalore, I had the privilege of having my own research assistants. And my research assistants then were either with a graduate degree or a postgraduate degree or MPhil or a PhD. I am surprised they could not match my Stanford research assistants. They were good. They were good. But my Stanford research assistants were any day better. Why? Why is that happening? And we will talk about it a little later. That brings me to a very different question, related though. What is the objective of education? We are all here, ample experience. And if we ask this question, why are we educating our children? For what purpose? You will tell me, it is obvious, professor, we want good citizens. Okay. Did we get good citizens? Ask that question. What is the objective of research? You will tell me, good society. Did we get good society? Think. So, when we are talking of resources for higher education and development of our universities, we need to think back and say, this was our objective. Did we prove to the world that if I produce a graduate, he is an asset to the country? Did we prove it? If not, then we have to question ourselves. And how do you prove it? Narayan Murthy is giving me the proof. Not only Narayan Murthy, he said it in public, that's why I'm quoting him. But at IIM Bangalore, many recruiters, and not only of IIM Bangalore, of other IIMs, told me, your students are not much better, but we come to you hoping that we will get the best and the cream of the best. But they are within 2 years, a student whom we take from Narsi Monji is able to match your student. And many of them told me, your students carry a chip on the shoulder, and illustratively, if he has to clean the floor, he will not. But if a Narsi Monji guy is there, he's willing to do everything that we want him to do. In business, that's what we want. So, we as policy makers in this room have to think, did the education system raise the aspirations so high, and then the society could not absorb them for reasons that they were unemployable, or for reasons that the society didn't have the capacity or didn't find them worthwhile, and therefore now these students whom we produced and generated and raised their aspirations are becoming frustrated, and a frustrated candidate is the worst to handle. We all need to think about it. So now let me conclude this portion of my talk based on the international experience. What are the things that we in India can explore? So of course, endowments, we need to, especially in the private sector. We need to follow the publication and publishing house route. The alumni has to play a very important role, and we need to be in touch with them. I was very happy when the Vice Chancellor mentioned, or I think I saw it in the report of the university, that you have in 25 years about 14,000 graduates into the system. Soon you should tap them. They should come and fund their younger brothers and sisters in such good education. The involvement of the private sector is a must. They are the ones who get all the benefit of the hard work which professors in these campuses do. If they had to train their own students, it would cost them a lot, and we do it for them. So they should be able to fund us. The executive courses are a great potential that needs to be explored, and these can be done easily as IIM Bangalore and other IIMs. In other universities they do it. Weekends are the best. Evenings are also another alternatives, and they have the sources to give in money. Just imagine the pride they would have that they are continuing with their higher education even if they are in their mid-30s. One way, and that is a very unexplored thing in our own country, and I'm sorry I'm not making a distinction between the physical sciences and the social sciences, but in general, the patents and innovations go a long way to incentivize research, and we in India are way behind it. And finally, I think the philanthropists, CSR, and individuals, we need to really chase them and get them involved into our research and academic activities. One way that they will feel interested in us is if we are able to justify that the students and the quality of students that we produce are an asset to the complete social network and social fabric around us. I want to now take, from this first section, I want to take a little detour and talk to you some facts about research as I perceive it. Emphasis on research beyond a certain threshold, according to me, dilutes research. And too much of focus on research then neglects the skills to teach. I have seen in these universities that I have had the privilege, with God's grace, to go and see and sit there in classes. The best researchers were not the best teachers. And the best teachers were not the best researchers. Unfortunately, that is my experience. And when I spoke to others, he is a Nobel Prize candidate. He has won a Nobel Prize. Why does he teach so poorly in the class? The answer that I would get amongst my peers and others is their mind is totally engrossed in research. And I'll be very honest with you. I was at IIM Bangalore, and because I had come with my experience of research in the Reserve Bank, and I'd done my PhD and MPhil and postdoctorate, teaching to me used to disrupt my flow of thoughts. And I eagerly was looking where I don't have to teach and I don't have to check papers. So I understood when in foreign countries I found research and teaching are two different things. And we will talk a little bit more in my last section, which will be the next section. In the emphasis on research, you know and I know how many journals have popped up, how the quality of research has diluted, and the UGC condition that before you are given the PhD, you have to have two publications in peer-reviewed journals, how the pressure on the journals has come and how the journals have mushroomed. So therefore, my concluding thought that more emphasis on research necessarily does not improve the quality of research or the research environment in the country. The other thing is who should lead research, and that connects with my previous section. Whom are we doing research for, and what is the objective of research? If it is good society, then who should throw up the topics of research? To my mind, it has to come from the government. What are the challenges that the bureaucrats are facing? It has to come from the industry. What are the challenges that the industry is facing? And while they are in the cutthroat competition of survival, can somebody do the backroom research for them and tell them that this is what can take you further ahead in your business? So to my mind, government and industry play a very prominent role in driving the wheel of research and providing direction to research. Both of them in our country have not yet discovered the symbiotic relationship with the academia, which in America they discovered. And I think that is one route we need to really follow. Now, given the economic situation of the country, given that our tax GDP ratio is just about 18% vis-a-vis nearly 40% in advanced countries, one understands why against the thought of 6% of GDP into education, less than 4 is going, because the resources are lacking. And if resources are lacking, how do we do that we optimally utilize these limited resources in expanding research? Now that is where we need to focus on. Now here are a few thoughts again, continuing the flow. Initial research that was done, and that reminds me as economist of John Robinson, where she had a tent in her garden because that's all she could afford to concentrate and do research. Madame Curie, who also had a room just outside where she could experiment. Alfred Nobel, who also was doing, the passion of research was so high and the resources were lacking that Alfred Nobel finally instituted the Nobel Prize for Research. In modern times, Bill Gates is an example where initial stages of research were done from personal money, which only show the passion for research. And how did that passion whip up? And that is where the educationists play a role, saying that here is an opportunity, saying that here is a challenge, can you come and help me with this challenge? Now, given that second portion over, I'm going to look at the third and final section of my presentation. I'm a professor of economics, and let me repeat, I've had the privilege of the best job in the country and the best education the world can offer. I've worked in the Reserve Bank. I've been educated at Harvard and Stanford. But I come from a country which is 5,000 years old. 5,000 years old. And I teach my students, and please listen to this because it hurts me. I teach my students what Charles said, what William said, what John said, what Kindleberger said, what Madame Curie said, and all of them said things which are less than 300 years ago. And I come from a civilization which is 5,000 years old. Did in this civilization nobody discovered the law of demand or the law of supply or management rules? That I have to depend and teach everything that has been discovered in a world which is totally different from mine, and I have to teach that to my students. Somebody in my student community and stand up and say, Professor, is there any Indian who ever did research? And that there is a course book or a textbook in which none else but Indians are referred? I don't have any. Why? Because we, me including, we and I'll give you illustrations in the next 1 minute, we have not produced or we have not marketed our research so that the world looks back and say, Indian Singh, Indian Reddy, Indian Rangarajan did this. And I'll give you now illustrations before you feel very frustrated with my statement. In my introduction, you would have heard I'm the non-executive chairman of Punjab and Sindh Bank. Punjab and Sindh Bank is 111 years old. 111. It's not the oldest bank. The oldest bank is State Bank of India, 200 years old. Allahabad Bank and Punjab National Bank are about 125 and 150 years old. I chair a bank, more humble and modest, 111 years old. It has not failed. Its customer base is Punjab. The country was partitioned in 1947, the bank survived. 2 world wars took place. We were impacted as Indians, the bank survived. First nationalization took place, 69, bank survived. The bank was nationalized in 1980, it survived. 2008 crisis happened, it survived. These days you have heard of the prompt corrective action. Punjab Sindh Bank is not under prompt corrective action, it has survived. And you know what? What norms I have to follow? I have to follow Basel norms. Who designed the Basel norms and for whom? This team is led by Americans. And in America, banks fail every 10 years. You'll be surprised, the Reserve Bank of India was created in 1935 to manage the currency and foreign exchange reserves. Fed Reserve, the central bank equivalent of Reserve Bank, was created in 1918 to take the blame, monitor and evaluate the commercial banks because they fail with such regularity that the time of the Congress is spent. Should India not set the norms for banking? Should it be those countries where banks don't survive? They set the norms. For countries where banks don't fail at all, lack of research. There's no good research in my country, even today, neither by me, who's speaking it out, saying that these are the norms historically, empirically, that the Indian banks have survived rest of the world. Here are the lessons learned from us. Second example. Can you imagine the strength of this country? On the dais, people from different parts of the country are sitting, with different ideologies and religion are sitting. I was very impressed. The opening dance done by a young lady is a Muslim girl. My bank, Punjab Sindh Bank, has a chairman from Punjab, Delhi, the managing director from Kerala, the executive director from Karnataka, and Andhra. Is it not enough to set an example for the world as to what interfaith dialogue and coexistence is? We have no research to tell the world that this is how you survive, and you survive for the glory of the whole society. 5,000 years of civilization that I'm talking of had a very tolerant, vibrant civilization. Places and people who could not find anywhere else to survive came and thrived here and blossomed here. That interfaith, that multiculture Is that nothing to boast of? Ayurveda, I've already mentioned to you. So I think, and I'll give you another illustration. That's a virgin illustration. As an economist, not told, not narrated anywhere, as an economist, I don't know how many of you understand what capital account convertibility is, but capital account convertibility means the money can flow in and outside the country freely. You can keep dollars in your pocket or pounds in your pocket, no questions will be asked. And others, if they want to keep rupee in their pocket, no questions will be asked. Rupees will be available to them, pound sterling and dollars will be available to us. It means a lot. It means there is no border. It means money is flowing freely. India was the only country 20 years ago facing the world threat. And I'm using the word world threat deliberately. Facing the world threat that in India, you central bankers, you economists are brain dead, that you do not know that capital account convertibility is good for your own economy. And two people stood, Dr. C. Rangarajan and Dr. Y.V. Reddy, and said, sorry, my country is too young, my industry is too young, my financial markets are too young, my banks are too inexperienced, we cannot handle capital account convertibility. They were ridiculed. Dr. Tarapur, another central banker, wrote 2 reports. Why capital account convertibility is not suitable and has to be conditional if applied to India. We were ridiculed. 2008 crisis. The view changed. And today, the pundits sitting at the International Monetary Fund in Washington, who were forcing capital account convertibility into every country, had to eat their own words and said, sorry, we take back our words. Capital account convertibility has to be conditional, and India was right. That is where I remember Rabindranath Tagore, and I was working in the IMF at that time in 2012, and that is when I remembered Rabindranath Tagore saying, if need be, stand alone. It's not easy to stand alone. If need be, stand alone. 20 years of world pressure we handled. And that, if we had shown that research to the world, believe me, and economists here will agree with me, the Asian crisis would not have taken place. Asian crisis where countries went down, their currencies lost, their leaders died, would not have taken place. So we have the wealth of information. We need to identify, recognize it, market it, rather than keep teaching theories which have been invented and not tested at all in our own land. So now, let me conclude my presentation. So what should I do now? Given my first part and my second part, my suggestion would be that dependence on government sources, because they are struggling themselves with many, many different priorities in different directions, tax GDP ratio being so low, they have to really handle other crises, and they are always facing one crisis after the other, and I always call it is the boiler room. They are fighting fire every now and then. Expecting and hoping resources from the government is a lost hope. Don't. Let's find out our own ways which we can explore. How do we explore? Going by the Western experience, and I'm very happy when I was told that Garden University, 25 years old, has the privilege of hosting students from 79 countries. That means we as an emerging country have hinterlands from where we can get our students. So do look for foreign country students, and follow the American system, subsidize my local students, and let the foreign students who have the capacity to pay for it. Look for foreign country collaboration. We could have campus of Stanford in India. If Stanford can have a campus in China, why campus of Stanford doesn't happen in India? We can have it. We can do collaborative research with Stanford and say, look, you send your students to India to learn about development economics. I provide you the support and my faculty. We will do joint research. We will learn from your rich country experience. You learn from me, which is about 100 years behind you, and let's produce some research which will be useful for Latin America and Africa, which are somewhere in between, either behind us or just ahead of us. I also want all of us to think, including me, can we have and can we redefine the university structure? Cannot we have teaching universities and research universities? And they can talk to each other. If in the teaching university, some professor has a bright idea, he can be sent on sabbatical to the research university, complete his research project, and come back to the teaching university. If in the research university a professor is fed up of doing research, sitting in an isolated room, wants to come and teach and test his theories on the students, he is welcome. But in general, as our Indian culture shows, people who love to meditate will go to the Himalayas, and people who want to be businessmen and householders will stay back. Sometimes the Himalayan sages come here, and sometimes the householder goes there. The research is a tapasya. Sitting in an isolated room, thinking and writing is a tapasya. Teaching is not. Can we think of a university structure where we identify the needs of the society and we teach? We identify the challenges of the society, the government, the business and industry, and we conduct research. They talk to each other, but the cores are different. I have another thought, and I'm really hurt. Tata's, a respected industry house, Tata's can fund $1 million to London School of Economics. Can't they fund an Indian institute sitting in Delhi? Can't they? But they want my product, which I produce in my university, but they fund London School of Economics. If they are so rich, should they not set up their own university? Some they can absorb, others, the rest of the society will absorb. So true for Narayan Murthy. If he finds his people, if he finds my stuff unemployable, he can set up a university, he can employ the best from there, and the rest he can give to the society. And I'm not talking of something unheard of. In our own country, the defense has their own university under NDA. They teach them for 3 years. They have their own colleges of teaching engineering to military officers because they don't want to waste time and energy on other engineering concepts. They know what their military engineers want. That's exactly what they teach them. If the Indian defense has thought of their own university and they train people from their universities into their workforce, then why industrial houses can't have their own universities? They can benefit. They don't have to say your product is unemployable. And if their own product turns out not capable of their own industry, the rest of the country can benefit from it. So maybe we need to start thinking of a different university model. Similarly, IT university, which I'm calling it the Narayan Murthy University, and could be train people to the requirement of the industry as NDA trains people for the requirement of the army. Now, I want to look at research in three different angles, and these are my last 3 points. If I have my local society, local industry, and I have in mind MSMEs here, in Kolhapur we have Kolhapuri chappals, in Punjab we have Punjabi jutti, in Rajasthan we have Rajasthani rajai. If in my local society there is need for research, dedicated research, it can be in quality of a product, it can be in marketing, it can be in strategy, it can be in export promotion, whatever, the social, local society should be asked to fund it, because they are the ones who are going to benefit from it directly. And therefore the local university, local research scholars have a mission to tell them, look, I can help you in marketing, promoting, in improving the quality of this product. And I'll give you a very simple illustration. We have all of us have worn Kolhapuri chappal. But you know, when you were young, we are in this age now, when you were young, you wore the Kolhapuri chappal. When you were middle-aged, you wore the Kolhapuri chappal. When you are my age, you wear the Kolhapuri chappal. What happened to Nike and Reebok in between? When you and me were young, Nike was young. But in the last 45 years, they know the size of your feet. They know the structure of your sole. They know exactly about your feet. And they've designed the shoe that, given the rugged surface on which you walk, the shoe will still provide you support and comfort. They have gone from simple Nike leather sole to air soles. My Kolhapuri chappal is still the same Kolhapuri chappal. Same as with my Rajasthan rajai. So the local, if they want research, they want marketing, they want promotion, we can help them do research. Local based, local financed. If the nation wants research, what type of research can a nation want? And I'll give you one illustration. I was in Washington, D.C., and here I meet a young person, and he tells me, look, I'm doing research. Research on what? Oh, he said, I can't tell you, but I am full-time into research. Okay. It's a few years later, I met someone again, and now I knew what research. You have heard of submarines? Submarines? There's a submarine warfare. There's a submarine which is always underwater. How do you detect it? Working underwater, you have the enemy submarine. How do you torpedo it? Right? It's a big thing. The government research in the US had reached a dead end, because underwater, if you're moving a torpedo or a jet to go and torpedo the submarine, more fuel you put in it, the more heavy it becomes, the less it can travel. And the private sector joined in. And they said, you know what? We have an idea. If we hit the submarine from below, and for a few minutes, the ammunition does not explode, but the hole which has been created gathers water, solid, gathers water, and now the ammunition explodes. Now what happens? Initially, just the ammunition explodes underwater, the impact is minimum. So you have to put more ammunition. Now what you do? You put ammunition, it hits the target, but does not explode. Water gathers in. And when water has gathered in, it explodes. The submarine will pack up like this. Because this is the submarine, you have made a hole inside it, water has entered, it's not exploding, water is getting in, now it explodes. What will the submarine do? Pack up like this and sink like this. national priority, national funding, private-public partnership, national funding. The third part is international cooperation, international based research. I will set up steel industry and I don't care. I have the money, I don't care what happens in my neighborhood. But there is an agency in the world, United Nations, International Monetary Fund, World Bank, ADBI. They will come in and say, look, don't do it. Because if you do it, then in your fringe, countries will suffer. Fund it. Fund the research. Tell me, how much steel industry can I set up? What is their cost benefit? What is my cost benefit? If I set up, they can use my steel. At what rate should I sell it to them? International funding of research and seek collaboration from the World Bank, IMF, ADBI. Let me now just conclude by saying, you and me are in a very fascinating era. Every generation says it. Maybe you find it very repetitive for me, but let me give you the reason why I am saying that. My reason is 5,000 years of my history, I was the richest. And when I say I was the richest, it doesn't mean that I can wear a suit and that's why I'm the richest. Today, the country which is the richest is America. It has a total income of about $20 trillion and it accounts for world's 20% of total GDP produced on the planet. 20%. And you know, there's nothing that America cannot do. Nothing. With just 20% of world GDP under their command. India was 33% of world GDP. 33%. Actually, the figure that I've given you, 20%, is wrong. It is 18% as of now, as we are speaking. India was 33% of world GDP. 1/3 of complete GDP produced on the planet was done in India. Whatever happened, 800 years, 300 years, how you want to define it, I don't mind it. But 1947, when we got our independence, India's poverty line, and we follow very conservative poverty line, India's poverty line showed 90% of Indians were below the poverty line. Our literacy levels were around 9 to 10%, and we were in a very weak state. UK, the economic capital of the world, the mantle taken over by USA, now the economic capital of the world, is little shaky. China, my neighbor, is taking over and trying everything that they can to take over. China's research, China's innovation, China's patents are almost similar to what Japan was in 1980s before Americans felt threatened and did what they did under the Japanese agreement. You're welcome to read about the Lower Agreement and you will know exactly what I'm saying. At this point of time, with India having such huge demographic dividend vis-a-vis China, which is suffering from a demographic deficit because of their one-child policy, we have a fair opportunity if we give it a serious try to regain our glory. If we let it go, we'll let it go. But I think we in this room have a responsibility that our students, our products, give it a fight which is genuine, real, and we come out victorious. That is why I'm saying we have a unique opportunity and therefore a unique responsibility. I hope your deliberations and my thoughts will be productive, and we will do something good for our country. Thank you so much.